Some people grew up poor and became adults who never talk about it. Not because it did not hurt, not because they forgot, but because even now, talking about it feels humiliating. You can usually tell, though, not by how much money they have now, but by the way they react to life, the way they feel guilty wasting food, the way they panic when their bank account drops a little, the way they hesitate before buying something nice, and then feel sick the moment they do, the way they save old containers, plastic bags, boxes, receipts, leftovers, not because they are messy, but because some part of them still believes everything might matter later. Because when you grow up poor, money is never just money. It is safety. It is electricity. It is whether the house feels calm tonight or tense. It is whether your parents are okay. It is whether asking for one small thing makes you feel selfish. And if you live in that atmosphere long enough, your body learns something dangerous. That peace is temporary. That comfort can disappear overnight. That one mistake, one emergency, one bad month can ruin everything. So even when life gets better, your nervous system does not fully believe it. That is why some people can be doing fine now and still live like disaster is always nearby. They struggle to relax. They overthink simple purchases. They check prices before allowing themselves excitement. They do mental math in the middle of joy. They ruin good moments by calculating consequences. They are generous with other people, sometimes too generous, but strangely harsh with themselves. They will spend money on a gift, on family, on friends, on anyone they love. But on themselves? Suddenly it feels excessive, wrong, unnecessary. Because many people who grew up poor were never taught how to enjoy. They were taught how to survive. And survival does not disappear just because your income changed. That is what people do not understand. Poverty is not just a financial condition. It becomes a psychological condition, a hidden operating system. It changes how you define safety, how you experience pleasure, how you receive help, how you see yourself. Some people who grew up poor become adults who look calm on the outside. But inside, they are always bracing, always preparing, always expecting something to go wrong the second life becomes too comfortable. And what looks like responsibility is sometimes just fear. Wearing a respectable face, that is why they keep things just in case. That is why they hate waste with unusual intensity. That is why they struggle to throw things away, even useless things. That is why they feel tension when the fridge gets empty. That is why they do not trust abundance, even when it finally arrives. Because if you were raised in scarcity, your brain learns not to attach to comfort too deeply. It learns this could vanish. So do not get used to it. Do not depend on it. Do not relax into it. Do not celebrate too early. And then those children grow up, and people call them practical, disciplined, hardworking, humble. But sometimes underneath all of that is a person who still does not feel safe enough to exhale. And maybe the saddest part is, many of them do not even realize they are still carrying it. They think, this is just my personality. I am just careful. I am just independent. I am just low maintenance. But sometimes that is not personality. Sometimes that is a survival strategy that stayed too long. Because when you grow up poor, you often learn to become easy. Easy to manage, easy to feed, easy to ignore. You learn not to ask for too much. You learn not to need too much. You learn to shrink your wants before life humiliates you for having them. And that follows people into adulthood in ways that are almost invisible. They apologize for basic needs. They struggle to ask for help. They hate feeling like a burden. They feel embarrassed by desire. They settle for less than they deserve, then call it gratitude. They act like they do not need much, but deep down, a part of them never believed they were allowed to have much. And no, they usually do not talk about it. Because poverty leaves behind more than stress. It leaves shame. Quiet shame, private shame, the kind that hides behind jokes, behind good manners, behind I'm fine, behind it was not that bad, behind other people had it worse. And yes, other people did have it worse. But that does not erase what happened to you. A wound does not stop being real just because someone else bled more. A lot of people who grew up poor became experts at minimizing their pain, because admitting it still affects them makes them feel weak, small, exposed, like they are being dragged backward into a version of themselves they fought very hard to escape. So they stay quiet, not because it is over, but because part of it still lives inside them. You can see it in relationships too. Scarcity changes love. When you grow up with instability, you do not just fear losing money. You fear losing safety, losing support, losing your place, losing the little bit of certainty you managed to build. So some people become hyper-independent. They would rather drown quietly than ask for help. Some become overgivers. They give too much, too fast, too often, because being useful feels safer than being vulnerable. Some accept crumbs, not because crumbs feel good, but because crumbs feel familiar. Because when you were raised around lack, you can start confusing relief with love. You can mistake tiny moments of care for real emotional safety. You can become grateful for the bare minimum because some part of you still thinks, at least it is something. Some people are not bad at receiving love. They are just used to earning every piece of it, and that affects self-worth more than they realize. Because if your childhood taught you that everything costs something, you may grow up believing your existence must be justified, that rest must be earned, that pleasure must be earned, that support must be earned, that softness must be earned. So even after becoming successful, they still feel behind, still feel one emergency away from collapse, still feel guilty resting, still overwork, still chase stability like it is running away from them. Their ambition is not always driven by dreams. Sometimes it is driven by fear. Fear of ever going back, fear of needing someone, fear of not surviving next time. And the world often rewards this trauma. It calls it discipline. It calls it hustle. It calls it resilience. But resilience can be beautiful and exhausting, because surviving everything is not the same as feeling safe. That is why some of the strongest people you know are secretly the most tired. They built their identity around enduring, holding on, pushing through, never needing much, never asking for much, never admitting how deeply the past shaped them. But eventually, something has to be said. Just because you adapted beautifully does not mean you were never hurt. Just because you became functional does not mean you became free. Just because you survived scarcity does not mean your body stopped expecting it. And maybe healing starts here, with realizing that what you call just how I am might actually be an old protection mechanism that never got permission to leave. You were not weak. You adapted. You learned how to survive uncertainty. You learned how to make little feel like enough. You learned how to brace for impact. That is not failure. That is intelligence under pressure. But not every defense mechanism deserves to stay forever. You are allowed to feel safe now. You are allowed to enjoy something without guilt attacking you afterward. You are allowed to stop apologizing for having needs. You are allowed to rest without proving you earned it first. And you are allowed to admit that growing up, poor changed you. Even if nobody noticed, even if you rarely talk about it, even if part of you still feels ashamed for being affected at all. Because some people grew up poor and never talk about it. Not because it did not matter, but because part of them is still living there.